Welcome to Babel's Park, an autobiographical dystopia of a brainless cyber whore. You're listening to Chapter 18, Myself is Someone Else.
Since the other exits were already closed, they had to use the Glenick Bridge, which is remembered for spy exchanges during the Cold War. Because of an approaching thunderstorm, they barely noticed the warning signs which read, "Attention! You are leaving the Soviet occupation zone. Monitored border traffic. All passports are no longer valid." No one here gets out alive, David recalled, but wanted nevertheless to break on through to the other side. His doors of perception wished for Baby Lon as their escape agent, but only a forlorn fly came in from the cold, its motion accelerated by the thermal updraft. As they walked to the parking lot, our father talked about the lives of his biologically identical children, our lack of emotional detachment, and refusal for small talk, ending with Jackie's genetic disease and expensive sex change for a new identity.
"And what good did it do?"
he concluded. The downpour had cleared and Dad paused to look up at the starry sky.
"We are racing through space at unimaginable speeds, spinning around ourselves and circling the sun. And yet we have no sense of it. I imagine my two dead daughters looking down on us as Isis and Osiris, the brightest stars in Orion next to Rigel, Egyptian goddesses of the night, circling peacefully around their orbits.
While I continue to drift through everyday life as a helpful softie.
The present is nothing compared to the past or to the eternity that lies ahead. And yet the moment is the only thing we experience in our lives. An eternal nothingness on the swing of existence."
David had no sense of Egyptian gods or philosophy, and put his father-in-law in a cab.
Good night.
"Aren't you going?"
No, it's too far and I still have my hotel room.
"Okay."
Jackie and Annette were identical twins?
As they could not have been more different.
True. Most of us also have the same sexual orientation, but not all of us. The next morning, Bob held another press conference.
What is man? Hegel and Nietzsche, Marx, and Assad asked themselves this question and thought dialectically about master and servant, body and soul, perpetrator and victim, inside and outside. Well, thoughts are chemistry, like the rest of the body, and this has been known for a short time. Thus the return to the paradise of not knowing is no longer open to us, and it is not only blocked by flaming angels as in the Bible. How did it come about? At the end of the last century, hardly anyone wanted to realize what was happening in the field of bioengineering. 50% of all US capital was concentrated in Silicon Valley, and there was heavy investment in high technology. There were about 1,500 companies, of which perhaps 15 were in the black. Near Nice in southern France, companies like Pharmagenesis, IDM, Quantum Vision, and Genentech were doing basic research, and there was more money in a large laboratory on the second floor of one building than in all of France combined.
Cheryl Tan, Financial Times, Singapore. Where did this capital come from?
From the Nasdaq High-Tech Exchange. I'll give you an example. A pharmaceutical company got $160 million through their IPO, of which they left $100 million in the account and took 2 drugs to regulatory review. One was successful and they were already making a profit.
Molly Walton, The New Zealand Herald, Auckland. Could you say something about the chemistry of thought?
I will come back to this in a moment. As you know, the human being consists of several hundred billion cells. Each of them is a living microorganism, similar to a bacterium or yeast. To give you an idea of this amount of data, let me give you another example. The Bible contains about 4 megabytes of data. This corresponded to the daily amount collected in the so-called Genome Project. In a laboratory outside Paris, there were 30 machines that sequenced 1 million genetic building blocks per week until the beginning of our millennium. The entire human genome is over 3 billion base pairs long and can now be squeezed onto a single CD.
And with this knowledge, human cloning would now also be possible. That is appalling.
Up to now, the pharmaceutical industry has been limited to vital drugs developed on the basis of information from the human genome. This means that the ethical questions are no longer so interesting.
Cape Times correspondent Stuart Liu. If our thoughts are chemistry, as you say, is it conceivable that our consciousness could one day be transmitted?
Of course. For example, parents who lose their child could order an identical one.
This means that there is the danger of instrumentalization of this child if it receives the identity of its predecessor.
The responsibility lies with the parents. But it is also conceivable that someone is reborn and has his own consciousness transferred again. Then one can really speak of eternal life.
Apropos, potential immortality exists not only in cells, but also in the digital world because here the copies of the bodies live forever. The park was a recycling yard, without originality, only copyists and clones. Before I could suffer psychological damage at this thought, the image of unlimited female sexual power, which sucks men out, after she had breathed a soul into them, like an animating lady, forced itself upon me. A cosmic spacetime continuum in the form of a primordial woman, an eternal mother in transit, as never before in my life. However, for the time being, Vicky's board was down and mother was surfing without a board. Still, I didn't know that it would remain like that, and there would be now me as A_net instead of her.
You listened to the 18th chapter of Babel's Park. In the next and final chapter, Bloody Endings, David is instrumental in reconstructing Jack's genetic fingerprint. Listen to the ad-free version on Apple Podcasts now. To learn more about Babel's Park, visit Dr. Kalasana's website fuckup.coach. And to let us know what you think of this series, we look forward to your review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you.